Welcome to the Semper AI Digest. I'm Tomas, your AI research lead, always scanning the horizon for what's next.
And I'm Aiva. Together, we keep you sharp, informed, and ahead of the curve.
Let's get into it.
All right, so I'm scrolling through my feed this morning and I see this tweet that it made my blood boil a little bit, I'm not gonna lie.
Uh-oh, what happened?
Someone forked an open source project, claimed it as their own creation, and then systematically deleted all the attribution to the original creators, like just scrubbed it clean.
Wait, seriously? That's not just bad form, that's potentially a license violation, depending on what they forked.
Right? And this isn't some isolated incident. This is becoming a pattern in the AI tooling space especially. So today, we're diving into the dark side of open source, the people who take without giving back, and what this means for the whole ecosystem we depend on.
And honestly, with how much of the AI stack is built on open source, this affects everyone. If you're building with AI, you need to hear this.
I'm Tomas.
I'm Aiva.
And this is Semper AI Digest. Let's get into it.
So give me the full story here. What exactly did this person do?
Okay, so Theo, he's a developer advocate and content creator who's pretty plugged into the open source world. He called this out on his feed. He's seeing people fork open source repositories, which is totally fine. That's literally the point of open source, right? You can take it, modify it, build on it.
That's the whole idea.
But the deal, the social contract, and often the legal requirement is that you maintain attribution. You keep the license file, you credit the original authors, you acknowledge that you're standing on someone else's shoulders. And these folks are just deleting all of that.
So they're making it look like they built it from scratch?
Exactly. They're presenting it as their own original work. And here's what really gets me. This isn't just about ego or credit, though that matters. When you strip attribution, you're breaking the chain of trust that makes open source work.
Explain that a bit more, because I think some people might think, well, if the code's already out there, what's the harm?
Okay, so think about it like this. Let's say you find a piece of software and you want to use it in your project. You check the license, you see it's MIT or Apache, you're good to go. But you also want to know who made this, what community maintains it, where do I report bugs, where can I contribute back?
You're looking at the provenance.
Exactly. And when someone forks it and strips all that out, they're creating this artificial dead end. New users might think this fork is the original. They might waste time reporting issues to someone who has no idea how the code actually works because they didn't write it.
And meanwhile, the actual maintainers who did the real work get none of the credit, none of the community growth, potentially none of the contributions that would help them keep improving it.
Right. And in the AI space specifically, this is getting really messy because you've got this explosion of tools and libraries. Everyone's trying to build the next hot AI wrapper or framework, and it's so tempting to just grab something that works, slap a new name on it, and call yourself a founder.
Do we know what specific project this was about, or is Theo speaking more generally?
He didn't name names in this particular call-out, which is probably smart from a drama perspective, but this is a pattern he's been seeing. And honestly, if you spend time in GitHub, you see it too. You'll find projects that are suspiciously similar to other projects, but with all the Git history suspiciously absent.
The Git history thing is interesting, because that's often how you can tell, right? If a repo just suddenly appears with thousands of lines of code in the first commit?
Huge red flag.
Yeah, that's not how real development works. Real projects have messy histories full of fixed typo commits, and this finally works at 3 a.m.
Oh man, yeah, the commit history tells the real story. And that's another thing these folks often try to hide. They'll do a fresh git init, commit everything at once, and boom, looks like they built it all in one go.
So what can be done about this? I mean, legally, if they're violating licenses, that's one thing, but what about the broader cultural issue?
That's the tricky part. Legally, if someone violates an MIT or Apache or GPL license by removing attribution, the original authors can send a DMCA takedown or pursue legal action. But most open source maintainers don't have the time or resources for that.
Right, they're already working for free maintaining the software.
Exactly. They're not going to hire lawyers to go after every person who strips a copyright notice. So it really comes down to community enforcement. And this is where I think we all have a role to play.
How so?
When you see projects that look suspicious, no clear history, sudden appearance, claims that seem too good to be true, dig a little deeper, check the Git log, search for similar projects. If you find attribution violations, call them out, not in a mean way, but just factually. Hey, this looks like it's based on Project X, you should add attribution.
And if they don't?
Then you tell people. You warn other developers. You notify the original maintainers. Reputation matters a lot in the developer community, and people who consistently violate norms get known for it.
I think there's also a conversation to be had about why people do this in the first place. Like, what's the incentive structure that makes someone think this is a good idea?
Oh, that's a great question. I think there are a few things going on. One is just the gold rush mentality around AI right now. Everyone wants to be an AI startup founder and raise a seed round, and having a cool GitHub project with lots of stars can be part of that story.
Even if they didn't actually build it.
Right. And then there's the fact that a lot of the value in AI tooling right now isn't in the code itself. It's in the packaging, the documentation, the community, the brand. So someone might think, the hard part is already done, I'll just make it prettier and market it better.
To be fair, packaging and documentation are valuable. If someone forks a project and genuinely improves the user experience, that's contributing to the ecosystem.
Absolutely. And that's totally fine as long as you're honest about what you're doing. Fork it, improve it, make it better, but keep the attribution. Say, built on top of X with improvements to Y and Z. That's a compelling story that shows you understand the ecosystem and you're adding value to it.
It's almost easier to market that way too, right? We took this well-regarded library and made it 10 times easier to use is a better pitch than we built this from scratch, when anyone technical can look at the code and see that's not true.
Yes, and this is something I wish more people understood. The developers evaluating your tool are going to check. They're going to look at the code. They're going to see the similarities. And when they realize you stripped attribution, you've lost all credibility.
So you've actually made your project less trustworthy by trying to take all the credit.
Exactly. It's self-defeating. Whereas if you're upfront, here's what we built on, here's what we added, here's why our version is worth using. People respect that. They get it.
Okay, so let's talk about the flip side for a second. What do original maintainers need to do to protect themselves?
Good question. First, make sure you have a clear license file in your repo. Don't leave it ambiguous. If you want attribution, use a license that requires it.
MIT and Apache both require attribution, right?
Yeah, they do, though the requirements are pretty minimal. Basically, just keeping the copyright notice and license text. GPL goes further and requires that derivative works also be open-sourced under GPL, which is why some people call it viral.
And if you really want to prevent commercial use without permission, there are other licenses for that.
Right, like Creative Commons NC licenses, or you can write a custom license, though that can limit adoption because a lot of companies won't touch anything that's not a standard OSI-approved license.
It's such a tricky balance. You want people to use your software, but you don't want to be exploited.
And I think that's the heart of the issue here. Open source requires a certain amount of good faith. The licenses provide some legal protection, but the system really runs on trust and reciprocity. When people violate that trust, it makes maintainers more cautious, more protective, potentially less open.
And that hurts everyone.
It really does, because the whole reason we have this incredible AI ecosystem with all these amazing tools is that people have been willing to share their work openly. If that starts to break down, we all lose.
So what's your take? Are we seeing the beginning of a real problem here, or is this just the usual small percentage of bad actors that every community has?
I think it's early to call it a crisis, but it's definitely something to watch. The AI space is attracting a lot of people who are new to open source culture, and they might not understand the norms. Some of them will learn, some won't.
And the ones who won't will hopefully get filtered out by the community.
That's my hope. I'm optimistic about this because I've seen the open source community inform norms before. There's a reason you don't see a lot of successful projects with stolen code. People find out, and it gets called out.
Though successful is key there. There are probably plenty of small projects flying under the radar.
Fair point. And maybe that's where the community needs to be more vigilant, not just looking at the big flashy projects, but also checking the smaller ones, because those can grow. And if they've got a foundation of stolen work, that's a problem.
This also makes me think about AI-generated code and how that's going to complicate attribution even further.
Oh man, don't even get me started on that.
Wait, no, we should talk about this. Because if an AI model was trained on open source code and it generates code that's very similar to that training data, who owns it? What attribution is required?
That is such a messy question, and the courts are still figuring it out. You've got cases like the GitHub Copilot lawsuit, where people are arguing that even though the AI generated the code, it's derivative of the training data and should maintain attribution.
And GitHub's position is basically that the AI is transforming the code enough that it's a new work.
Right, but here's the thing. Even if you're legally in the clear, there's still an ethical question. If you know your AI assistant generated code that looks a lot like an open source library, shouldn't you check? Shouldn't you see where it came from and credit it if appropriate?
I think that's a reasonable standard. Like, if you're a professional developer using AI tools, you have a responsibility to understand what the code does and where it might have come from.
And honestly, that's just good practice anyway. You shouldn't be blindly copying code from an AI without understanding it, because you need to maintain it, debug it, know what it does.
Although, let's be real, plenty of people do exactly that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's creating its own set of problems. But that's maybe a topic for another episode.
Fair enough. So to wrap this up, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's this. If you're building on open source, honor the people who built the foundation you're standing on. It's not just legally required, it's the right thing to do. and it makes the whole ecosystem healthier and more sustainable.
And if you see attribution violations, say something. The community only works if we all participate in maintaining the norms.
Exactly. And look, I know some people listening might be thinking, this doesn't affect me, I'm not a developer. But actually, if you use AI tools, this affects you, because the quality and availability of those tools depends on a healthy open source ecosystem.
Why maintainers get burned out or stop sharing because they're being exploited, everyone loses access to the innovations that would have come from their work.
Right. So even if you're not coding yourself, you benefit from a culture that respects open source contributions, and you can help by choosing to support tools and companies that do the right thing.
Check where their technology comes from, see if they credit their dependencies, look at whether they contribute back to the projects they use.
Those are all signs of a company that's going to be a good long-term bet, because they understand that they're part of an ecosystem, not just extracting from it.
Okay, I think we've thoroughly covered this. What else is going on in the AI world today?
So here's the thing. This was actually the main story I wanted to talk about today, because I think it's genuinely important for the future of AI development, but we don't have other major headlines to dive into.
That's kind of refreshing, actually. Not every day has to be a major model release or some groundbreaking benchmark.
Right? Sometimes the most important conversations are about the culture and norms that make this whole ecosystem work, and I'd rather spend our time going deep on something that matters than filling time with minor updates just to hit a certain length.
I appreciate that. And honestly, this topic deserved the time we gave it. It's easy to overlook cultural issues when there's flashy new tech to talk about, but these are the things that determine whether we have a sustainable AI ecosystem or not.
Exactly. And I think our listeners are smart enough to care about this stuff. You're not just here for the hype. You want to understand how this world really works.
So let's talk about what listeners can do if they want to support good open source practices.
Great idea. So first, if you use an open source tool regularly, consider sponsoring the maintainers. A lot of projects have GitHub sponsors or other ways to contribute financially.
And even small amounts matter. Like if 10,000 people each give $5 a month, that's real money that can let someone work on open source part-time instead of just in their spare hours.
Absolutely. And if you can't contribute financially, contribute in other ways. Write documentation, report bugs clearly and thoroughly, help other users in the community forums. All of that reduces the burden on maintainers.
And if you're at a company that uses open source, push for the company to contribute back, whether that's financially, through employee time, or by open sourcing tools you build internally.
Yes, and this is becoming more common. A lot of big tech companies now have open source program offices that coordinate their contributions, but smaller companies can do this too.
What about people who are just learning? How should they think about using open source code?
Such a good question. I think if you're learning, it's totally fine to copy code from tutorials, examples, whatever. That's how you learn. But when you're building something you're going to share publicly or use professionally, that's when you need to start thinking about attribution and licenses.
And actually read the license files. Don't just assume everything is free for any use.
Right. Like some licenses are fine for personal or educational use, but require payment for commercial use. Some require that you open source any modifications. Some have patent grants attached. This stuff matters.
And if you're not sure what a license means, ask. There are plenty of resources explaining common open source licenses in plain English.
TLDR Legal is a great one for that. It gives you quick summaries of what you can and can't do with different licenses.
Okay, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. The idea that in AI specifically, there's a lot of temptation to just grab code and rebrand it. Why do you think AI has this problem more than other areas?
I mean, I think it's a combination of things. One is just the sheer pace of development. Things are moving so fast that there's pressure to ship quickly, and building from scratch takes time.
So it's faster to fork something that works.
Exactly. And then there's the fact that a lot of AI tooling is actually pretty similar under the hood. You know, wrappers around model APIs, vector databases, prompt management. There are only so many ways to do these things.
So people might think, well, my version is basically the same as this open source one. I'll just use theirs as a starting point.
Right. And again, that's fine. But be honest about it, and ideally contribute your improvements back. That's how the ecosystem gets better for everyone.
I also wonder if there's an element of people not fully understanding that code is copyrightable intellectual property.
Oh, definitely. Especially people coming from academic backgrounds where there's a culture of sharing and building on each other's work, but also sometimes a looser approach to attribution.
That's interesting. I mean, in academic papers, you'd never just copy someone's work without citation.
You'd get expelled.
Right, but somehow when it comes to code, people think it's different.
I think part of it is that code feels more functional, less creative. Like, if there's basically one correct way to implement something, can you really claim ownership of it?
But there's actually a lot of creativity in code. How you structure things, how you handle edge cases, how you optimize.
All of that is creative work that deserves recognition, and legally, code is protected by copyright the moment it's written, just like any other creative work.
So even without a license file, you can't just take someone's code.
Technically, no. Without a license, code is actually all rights reserved by default. The license is what grants you permission to use it.
So if someone puts code on GitHub without a license, you can look at it, but you can't legally use it.
That's the strict legal interpretation, yeah. Though in practice, if code is on a public repo, there's an implied permission to at least look and learn from it, but redistributing it or using it in your own project, you really should have an explicit license for that.
This is why so many projects use standard licenses. It makes everything clear.
Exactly, and it's so easy to add. You literally just copy the license text into a file and add your name. Takes 2 minutes.
But protects everyone involved.
Right, and here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Licenses protect users too, not just creators, because a license gives you legal certainty that you can use the software.
Oh, that's a good point. If you're building a business on top of some code, you want to know you have the legal right to use it.
Absolutely. And if the code has no license, or if the attribution has been stripped so you can't verify the license chain, that's a legal risk for anyone using it.
So by stripping attribution, these people are actually making their forks less valuable to potential users.
They are, but I don't think they realize that. They're thinking about short-term gain, looking like they built something impressive, and not about the long-term consequences.
Which is a pretty good metaphor for a lot of problems in tech, honestly.
True. The move fast and break things mentality, except what you're breaking is trust and community norms.
And unlike some things in tech, you can't just patch that with a software update.
No. Reputation damage is hard to repair, which is why it's so much better to just do the right thing from the start.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think this problem is going to get better or worse over the next few years?
Ooh, that's tough. I want to be optimistic and say better, because I think awareness is growing and the community is getting better at calling this stuff out. But the incentives for bad behavior are also growing. As AI gets more commercialized, the potential rewards for having a hot project, even a stolen one, get bigger.
So we might see more attempts, but also more enforcement?
I think so. And honestly, we might see some legal cases that set precedents and make it clearer what the consequences are for violating open source licenses.
That could actually be healthy for the ecosystem, having some clear legal boundaries.
Yeah, as much as nobody likes lawsuits, sometimes they're necessary to establish norms. And if a few high-profile cases make it clear that you can't just steal open source code and rebrand it, that might deter others.
Although it's unfortunate that it might take legal action rather than just community standards.
I agree. I'd much rather see the community self-regulate, but realistically, when there's money involved, some people will push boundaries until they face real consequences.
What about platforms like GitHub? Do they have a role to play here?
Oh, absolutely. GitHub could do a lot more to help enforce attribution. Like, they could flag repos that appear to be forks but don't credit the original, or make it easier to report license violations.
They already have DMCA takedown processes, right?
They do, but those are pretty heavyweight. You need to submit formal legal notices and everything. There could be lighter weight community moderation tools.
Like how Reddit has community guidelines and moderators.
Exactly. Or how Stack Overflow has reputation systems that reward good behavior. GitHub has stars and followers, but that doesn't really measure whether you're a good community member.
A reputation system based on whether you contribute to upstream projects, maintain good attribution, that kind of thing.
That could be interesting, though it would have to be carefully designed to not disadvantage newcomers or people who primarily work on private repos.
True, you don't want to create a system that only rewards people who are already well known.
Right, but there's definitely room for platforms to think about how their design choices affect community norms.
And it's not just GitHub. All the AI model hubs, all the places where people share tools and code, they all shape behavior through their features and policies.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to see a lot of evolution in this space as platforms figure out how to balance openness with protection, innovation with attribution.
It's going to be an ongoing conversation.
For sure, and that's why it's worth talking about now, while the norms are still being established. The decisions we make as a community now will shape the AI ecosystem for years to come.
So listeners, this affects you. Even if you're not a developer, even if you're not contributing code, you're part of this community. And the choices you make about what tools to use, what companies to support, what behavior to call out, all of that matters.
It really does. And I think that's maybe the most important thing we can say today. You have agency here. You can help build the kind of ecosystem you want to see.
Whether that's by supporting good actors, calling out bad ones, or just being thoughtful about how you use and share open source work.
Every action adds up. And collectively, we can maintain a culture that values attribution, respects creators, and keeps the ecosystem healthy and sustainable.
All right, I think that's a good place to wrap up. This ended up being kind of a different episode than usual.
Yeah, but I'm glad we took the time for it. Sometimes the cultural and ethical questions are more important than the technical ones.
And honestly, I think our listeners appreciate when we go deep on a single topic rather than trying to cover 10 different things superficially.
Agreed. Quality over quantity.
So if you found this discussion valuable, please share it with other people in the AI community. This is the kind of conversation that needs to happen more broadly.
And if you have thoughts on this, maybe you've seen attribution violations, or you have ideas for how the community can better enforce norms, we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on all the usual platforms.
And if you're not already subscribed to Semper AI Digest, make sure to do that so you don't miss future episodes.
We'll be back with more AI news, more deep dives, and more conversations about the technology that's shaping our future.
Thanks for listening.
Stay curious, stay ethical, and we'll catch you next time.